everybody, Claudia Boleyn here, and today's video is going to be an unpleasant one, I'm afraid. As someone who talks about social justice issues, mental health, all that kind of stuff on the internet, I'm often linked to various articles, and I don't often get the time to read them all. But I was linked to one specific article the other day that I did have time to look at, and it made me so angry that I felt I had to make a video about it. Now, there are lots of articles that make me angry on the internet, but this one really did strike a chord with me as one of the most disgusting articles I've ever had the displeasure of reading with my own two eyes. It's not one of those articles for young women about things that young men don't find attractive. I actually find those articles, you know, where they have the list of 10 different types of clothing or makeup styles that men don't find attractive, I find them really helpful because I know exactly what to put on my face and body to deter those sorts of men and keep them away from my life, so I actually find them great. But no, this article aims all of its hatred, bigotry and bias at the mentally ill. Now, what I don't understand is why you would wake up in the morning and think to yourself, I'm going to write an article which puts down the mentally ill. I just don't understand what would make someone who isn't mentally ill themselves, I'm assuming this person isn't mentally ill themselves, certainly the people commenting on it and sharing it around aren't mentally ill themselves, but what would make you want in your heart to go out there and upset and make life more difficult for those that are already struggling with mental illness? I don't understand those sorts of people. I don't understand how it's beneficial to anyone at all. So the title of this article is 10 Signs Your Mental Illness is Made Up for Attention. I'm sure just hearing that title there are alarm bells going off in your brain and the red flags are waving all over the place. But it gets much worse, and if you sit through this video with me, I'm going to go through this article with you. It's probably going to make you quite angry if you are A, mentally ill, or B, just a nice human being. But I had to make some sort of response to this because these are the beliefs that I see flying around on the internet and in real life every single day. And they make life as a mentally ill person even harder than it was already. And it's already pretty hard to get through your life as a mentally ill person, so, you know, you don't need these extra hurdles shoved in your way by neurotypical people who have no clue what it's like. Here's the introduction to the article. These are the obvious signs that even if you do struggle with some anxiety, depression or whatever, you are exaggerating a decent part of it for all the attention and the excuses that it provides you. If you see someone acting like this, please call them out. I am so glad that there are hordes of neurotypicals out there ready to hunt out the fake mentally ill, apparently to help us, the real mentally ill. I didn't realise that neurotypicals had this skill. Apparently they have better skills at spotting and understanding mental illness than the mentally ill themselves. Like, that's really impressive. Well done. Number 1. Your definitions of illness change all the time. One day, depression means you can't get out of bed or tie your shoes or pay bills. The next, it means you want to stay home and watch movies. The next, it's not that serious. Your definitions change all the time, depending on the context and how sick you really want to look. Now, I'm someone who's suffered with depression most of my life, and it's a very, very unpleasant mental illness, and sometimes it makes you feel so bad that you feel like life isn't even worth living, and I've attempted suicide twice before. It's a really dark and horrible place to be in, and it is an illness. It's not something that you voluntarily go through for attention. It's an illness, and just because it can't be seen from the outside doesn't mean it's not real. But the thing is with depression is that it isn't always consistent. Because it is a mental illness, it is very up and down. Now, I suffer depression, but I have good days and I have bad days. Now, some days when I have depression, I can't get out of bed, I don't even want to shower, I curl up in a ball and I cry and I think about suicide, and that's me at my very lowest. But some days when I'm also suffering from depression, I'm able to be more active and I will have a very, very low state of mood and I will have these bad urges and I will feel very down, but I'll be able to be more active on those days and do more things. What I'm trying to say is that there is no one state of depression, and for most depressed individuals you'll have good days and you'll have bad days because it is an illness you can't control, and we're obviously trying to recover and fight it. So on the days when it is more fightable, we're obviously going to try and get out there and do stuff. But there are also going to be days where we're just going to cry in bed. That's not the sign of someone lying about their illness, that's the sign of someone being truthful with you about what they are capable of doing on each day. Anyone with any knowledge of depression or any experience with depression would know that, so it is quite worrying that the person writing this article has got that as a signifier of a fake mental illness or someone who's attention seeking. Number 2, you are constantly sharing shit about it on social media. Every time someone writes a hashtag powerful essay on whatever website about their struggle with upper middle class anxiety, you share it. You share how to date someone with gap for mental illness. You share 7 things only people with OCD know. It's your whole identity, and you're constantly reminding people that you are sick and brave and in a permanent struggle against the world. Now this is going to be a fun point to pick apart. So in this second bullet point of this wonderful helpful list to find the fake mentally ills, you are constantly sharing shit about it on social media. Now why would sharing information about mental illness, especially a mental illness that you or a family member struggles from, why on earth would that be a bad thing? I often share articles about mental illnesses I don't have to help people with those mental illnesses fight some stigma and to educate other people. I often share articles about the issues that I do have so people can better understand where I'm coming from, and my family often share these things as well, just because they're decent human beings that want to educate others and to help the mentally ill. I didn't realise that to be a real mentally ill person you had to sit very quietly in the corner and never mention it. Now what is this rubbish about upper middle class anxiety? Now of course, if we look at society, there is a thing called classism, and people have privilege based on class, but when it comes to mental illness, it doesn't discriminate. Anyone from the richest to the poorest in any country in the world can get depression because it's a mental illness. The ignorance of that statement is mind-blowing. And then this point says it's your whole identity, and you're constantly reminding people that you are sick and brave and in a permanent struggle against the world. Now this shows nothing at all about the mentally ill people who are sharing their stories and education about other mental illnesses. All it really shows is the ignorance of the writer of this article, if it can even be called an article, instead of like a total list of hatred. Now I don't know about you guys, but for me, being mentally ill has majorly shaped my life, and it's a major part of my life, it impacts my life every single day. I can't just forget about it. But me saying that I'm mentally ill proudly online and being able to say, look, I might be ill, but I'm fighting through it and I'm not ashamed of it, it doesn't make it my whole identity. I mean, I love history and I love art and I love music and I love Star Wars and I love so many things in life. To be honest, I think it's more a reflection on these horrible ableist people that aren't able to see you as a person beyond your mental illness. I have never ever in my life, and I talk to a lot of mentally ill people and read a lot of mentally ill people's blogs and all that kind of stuff, but I've never in my life seen a mentally ill person try to make out that their mental illness is their whole identity. Why would somebody want to do that? Is there any evidence of anyone in the history of the world ever doing this? That is just so amazingly questionable to me, and I feel like that's just been plucked out of the writer's arse. Number 3, you list it in your bios. If your bio announces from the get-go that you have depression, before you even mention, I don't know, a job or a hobby or an accomplishment, you need help. And not in the Lexapro department, in the you have nothing interesting to say about yourself besides a disorder department. Now this seriously riles me as someone who does have my mental illness in my bio on my Tumblr account. And the reason I have my mental illness in my bio, and the reason that other mentally ill people tend to do this, is so we can relate to other mentally ill people. If I am looking for blogs to follow, I might think to myself, you know, I'd love to see a blog by a person who understands the struggle of anxiety or depression or BPD. So it's really helpful if in their bio it says that they suffer from those illnesses, because I can think, this person will understand, this person posts content which is relevant to what I'm interested in and that will help me in my life, I'm going to follow them. Also, some people do it to push back at the ableism of society and to say, I'm not ashamed of it. Here it is, it's right here, it's out there, it's on my blog, it's on my Twitter header, it's on whatever site I'm on. I'm not ashamed of it, and you're just going to have to deal with it. And also, you can't win with these sorts of people, like the type of person that wrote this article, because if you didn't put your illnesses in your sidebar or your bio and then happened to mention that you were mentally ill, they would then accuse you of not being mentally ill because you hadn't been completely honest and upfront about it the whole time. Number 4. You use it to be an asshole to other people. If you don't call someone back, it's not because phones give you anxiety, it's because you're an inconsiderate asshole. If you don't show up to a friend's birthday party, it's not because you're bad in social situations, it's because you're an inconsiderate asshole. If you take your stress out on your significant other constantly for no reason, it's not because you're depressed, it's because you're an inconsiderate asshole. Mental illness, although convenient, is not a catch-all reason to treat people like shit. Oh, good lord. Okay, let's start with the first point about not calling someone back. I'm not sure if the person who wrote this understands, but a lot of people with anxiety do find talking on the phone quite difficult. This is a known feature of anxiety, so I don't understand why this is even on the list. It doesn't make you an inconsiderate asshole if you're having a terrible day and you're curled up in bed and you don't want to answer the phone. I don't know about you guys who are mentally ill out there, but my friends and my family understand that sometimes I do have really, really bad days. So if they need to contact me and I'm not answering the phone, sometimes they'll text me and I'll be able to look at my phone and give them a text back when I'm ready. People don't realise how difficult it can be to interact with other people when you are that depressed, when you are having a day that's that bad. You don't even have the energy to get out of bed sometimes, so you are definitely not going to have the energy to interact with another person. The next point, if you don't show up at a friend's birthday party, it's not because you're bad in social situations, it's because you're an inconsiderate arsehole. I feel like this writer has had some personal experience with like their bestie not turning up to their party, and I might suggest that the reason this bestie didn't turn up to their party, maybe they did use mental illness as an excuse, maybe they weren't mentally ill, maybe they just wanted to get out of going to this absolute arsehole's party. Can you blame them for doing that? I can't. I wouldn't want to go to this person's party, it would be rubbish. One that's more serious is if you take your stress out on your significant other constantly and for no reason, it's not because you're depressed, it's because you're an inconsiderate arsehole. Now I completely agree with this. I don't see what this has got to do with mental illness in general. Being abusive to your partner is obviously very wrong, and I don't know why it's in a list with depressed people not calling people back and sometimes not feeling well enough to go to parties. Number 5. When it's convenient, your illness takes a back seat, unless something really fun is coming up and you manage to get it together, or you want to impress a date by pretending that you're really active and outgoing and happy, then you're fine. The ignorance of this point is absolutely overwhelming. I mean, let's tackle the bit about you want to impress a date by pretending that you're really active and outgoing and happy. Now, why would that mean that someone is not really mentally ill? Does that not mean that unfortunately in this society there is a stigma towards those that are mentally ill? So many of us, if we were in a romantic situation on a first date or something, would feel very nervous and worried about disclosing that information to the person that we liked. Why would that reflect badly on the person that's ill and not on society in general? Also, if I was going on a date, I'd be really worried that this date that I don't really know would be like the writer of this article, and the moment I told them, they'd start treating me like absolute rubbish and like I was some sort of fraud. So I don't think the writer of this article understands that they're perpetuating the whole cycle. And if they want mentally ill people to stop pretending to be fine on dates and things and tricking them or whatever, then they need to help fight the stigma of mental illness so more of us feel like we can be more honest straight away. Number 6, you think it's controversial to talk about. If you think it's still a controversial thing to announce to your Facebook friends that you struggle with bouts of anxiety, you're either living under a rock or looking to be a martyr. It's not controversial anymore. Everyone is open about their struggles with mental illness, and posting stuff like, "You shouldn't be ashamed of your depression, girlfriend," is just redundant. If you need to announce it, fine, but don't pretend like you're being brave by saying you're sad sometimes. Okay, let's just clear one thing up. Having depression, which is a mental illness, is not being sad sometimes. Having a mental illness like depression drives lots of people to suicide. How you can compare that with feeling sad occasionally is completely beyond me. They say it's not a controversial thing to talk about, and yet they've written an entire article with 10 points trying to make it controversial. Are you trying to tell me that you're trying to normalise mental illness with this hateful article? How is that helping anyone? How can you say it's not controversial and difficult to talk about mental illness when there are articles like this floating around where neurotypicals get to band together and try and seek out the fake mentally ill? Do you not think that makes life just a little bit difficult for mentally ill people? Seeing articles like this and how many people seem to agree with it makes me know that those mentally ill people who are able to be open about their struggles are being brave. I guarantee you that if you're a mentally ill person online who is open about your mental illness, you will receive some form of hate from someone who does not understand mental illness, accusing you of being a faker, basically accusing you of any of these points that we've read so far and some that we have yet to read yet, but we are looking forward to. Number 7. Even though your relationships have clear patterns, you don't accept that they might be your fault. It's never you, it's always your string of completely unique exes who all just happen to be terrible people and just couldn't accommodate your #illness. Ugh, next time you'll date someone who gets you. Again, I can't help but think that behind this point is some sort of story where the writer maybe had a bad relationship with someone who's mentally ill. Maybe they used to constantly go on and on about this like weird checklist they have for being mentally ill, and it destroyed their relationship with the mentally ill person, and now they've got some sort of beef about it deep in their soul. And if we go back to the point of this article, which is how to spot if your mental illness is made up, then I don't actually see how this point has anything to do with that. How is it's your fault your relationships are going wrong in any way tied up with your mental illness is fake? I just don't get that. That seems like a huge leap. Number 8. You constantly post basing things so that people will ask what's wrong. It's been a bad day. Sad face. Not feeling good. Oh, I can't even. Yeah, you're posting those statuses because you want people to ask how you are and you want to vent about it. But everyone has problems, and using the feel sorry for me card over and over again is incredibly irritating for everyone around you. Again, we can see how this list has basically turned into I hate the mentally ill instead of these people are faking their mental illness. Funny how quickly it's spiraled into that territory, isn't it? I agree, I do find that annoying as well. Like, I'm on Facebook and sometimes I do feel a bit pissed off and I see someone write, oh, rubbish day, and like you do know they want attention, and part of me thinks, well, why don't you just tell us what's wrong? But then I think again, like, and that's what society's done to me to make me think that wanting attention and expressing emotion is bad. But if we really think about it, what is actually wrong with that? Is it hurting anybody? Is it a bad thing for a person to want attention? Isn't it more of a sad thing that that person needs to get attention from other people and feels like they can't express themselves properly? And also, maybe these people wouldn't be so vague about their issues if they weren't afraid of arseholes like the writer of this article ripping them apart for actually talking about their problems. I mean, maybe they had a bad day because they couldn't answer an important phone call because they were feeling so bad. But if they were to write that, then someone would link them to this article. Maybe that is the problem. Number 9. Maybe you're not really trying to get better. Maybe you take medication, maybe you're in therapy, but when it comes to the behaviour that you're doing over and over again, you're not interested in doing the hard work that is required to overcome mentally ill behaviours. You're interested in talking about it and identifying as a person who has gap for disorder, but you're not interested in being better because that's no fun. Now, if someone is taking medication for their mental illness and they're also engaging in therapy, then how can they be accused of trying not to get better? Why do you think someone puts themselves through medication and therapy? Medication has been really helpful in my life for managing panic attacks and anxiety and my moods that can swing quite badly. At the same time, I mean, it has bad side effects. No one really wants to be on medication. It makes you feel quite ill sometimes. And as for therapy, it's a very brave thing to do to go to therapy. It's very, very difficult to talk about mental illness because of the stigma and the shame that society puts onto you. It's a real challenge to go to therapy, and anyone who does go to therapy and is able to be honest and talk about their illness and try to figure out ways to help themselves is a really brave person, and I really respect them. This person says that you might take medication and go to therapy, but when it comes to the behaviour that you're doing over and over again, you're not interested in doing the hard work that is required of you. What is this mysterious hard work that is required of me? I'd like to know what this is, because if there is some mysterious other form of making me better, I would love to try it, because I can tell you that being mentally ill is not fun. It's not fun to be 21 years old and to start crying and having panic attacks in public and not be able to go beyond 20 minutes of my house, and sometimes to lie in bed crying and want to kill myself. Like, that's not fun. I can assure you I would far rather life without the mental illness. How incredibly ignorant and offensive is it to say that it's fun to have a mental illness? This can only have been written by someone who's never experienced experience mental illness, because it is absolute hell. I would not wish mental illness on my worst enemy, and there are people in this world that I truly, truly hate, but I could not wish this on them. This one has just made me so cross. I have to move on to the next point now. Oh my lord, this is a gem. Okay, number 10. And finally, pansexuals, demisexuals and other special snowflakes of the LGBT community. Although sexuality is not a mental illness, these people who have to be special snowflakes need to be called out more. It's demeaning to people who struggle with their sexuality, as it makes them seem like some kind of a joke. You're either straight, gay, bi or asexual in some cases. But there's no need to make up your own label. What does the LGBT community have to do with people faking mental illness? What sort of a reach is this? It's like the author wasn't content with totally ripping apart the mentally ill. Like, who else has a hard time in society? I know, the LGBT community. Let's jump on them and make their day rubbish too. I'm not even going to get into how amazingly silly this point is in the first place. I just can't understand or believe that this person has dragged the LGBT community into this weird rant. They're saying that they're not comparing those that are mentally ill to those that are in the LGBT community and making out that having a sexuality which isn't straight is a mental illness, but then that's exactly what they're doing with this point. Like, are they a god? Have they decided, no, there are just 4 sexualities. You can either be gay or bi or asexual or straight, and that's it. Who gave them that authority? And who in their right mind actually sits down and thinks, oh, well, I know everything about sexuality. I know that there are only 4 sexualities. I'm only one sexuality myself. We don't know what the author is. But that means that I know about all other sexualities. And these ones, they're too far out, I'm afraid. So they can't be real. When this started, I really didn't think it could get worse than it already was. But as you can see, we have really spiralled into the depths of hell with this article. I'm glad you've been here with me to go through this. And a final note from the author here, who's called Malcolm apparently, according to the bottom of the page. Right. Mental illness is serious. If you have to pretend to be mentally ill to get likes, you're just an idiot. People like these take the stigma away from mental illnesses and make it seem trivial. Well, thanks, Malcolm, because you've really educated people with this post about mental illness. You've really supported the mentally ill and made us feel very safe and comforted. You've made it so much easier for us to be honest about our mental illness and to fight that stigma. It's like you're doing the Lord's work. It's like you were sent from heaven to help us weird, crazy people. I mean, who knew that I was making up my entire mental illness? I mean, you learn something new every day. Right, I'm going to link this article in the information box at the bottom of this video, and there is actually a comment section on this article so you can say what you think, and I must say it does need some people to get in there and put these people right, because some of the stuff I'm reading on this comment section is just, it makes me want to bang my head against the wall, basically. But anyway, feel free to have a read of this monstrous article yourself and see what please tell me what you think about it in the comment section. I'm sure most people who've watched the entirety of this video will probably be so angry at this point that they're probably like steaming from the ears. But don't worry, my friends, I want to leave this video on a positive note, and I know I've been kind of sarcastic throughout and kind of having a laugh about it, but it is really serious, and it upsets me that this sort of attitude still exists, and you do see this a lot in real life, and it makes life really difficult for people who are mentally ill. But I am mentally ill, my friends, and it's really tough, but I am in recovery, and, you know, I'm trying to live with it. I know that it's real, you know that it's real, we don't have to listen to these people. You know you're trying your hardest, and you know how difficult it is. These people don't know what they're talking about. Clearly they've never experienced it, so I don't know what right they have to talk about it in the first place. But just know there's a lot of love out there for you, and not to get too down about it. Because there are lots of people that do want to fight the stigma and educate others, and really do support our community. Okay, I love you loads, and I'll see you really soon for another video. Goodbye!